Start recording. Okay, there we go. Now, um, so we're going to start on chapter 12, and remember the verses, the chapters and verses were added to the Bible, um, not near, but pretty good ways back there. But they were done by editors, and sometimes they miss a thought or two. This is one of the cases. Really, that last sentence in chapter 11 is really the first thought in that paragraph of chapter 12. So remember, the chapters and verses in the Bible were put there by some editors, and you really need to read the Bible. That's one of the reasons I like the Bibles with a single column here, because they have the paragraphs that are easy to see, and it helps me not to look at the chapters but to look at the actual paragraphs in there, like you were reading a regular book from the bookshelf. So just bear that in mind as you're reading through your Bible. But we'll be starting on that first, what is it, verse. There you go, Jeff. I have to take my glasses off to read now. I'm going to get me a large print Bible, and I hate to give my old torn up one out, but I can't read this stuff anymore, so I got to get a large print Bible. But that's verse 19 in chapter 11. So that's where I'm going to start here tonight. Are there any questions before we get started on anything? Anything? Um, those of you that were at Wednesday night, anything left over from there or anything else before we get started? All right, so chapter 12. Now, one of the things I want us to always remember about Revelation is that first, in the first chapter in Revelation. You don't have to turn there. I'm going to read it to you. We always remember this when we're reading here. The first chapter, in verse 19, on the first chapter, it says, and this is John speaking here, and it says that the Lord told him, "Write there these things that you have seen, those that are and those that are to take place after this." John is writing this at God's instruction. John is writing down what he saw and what he heard purely. There is very little commentary. That John will say something to clarify a phrase or something, but this is pretty much John looking, listening, and seeing this stuff that's going on around here, that's being told to him, that he's seeing, that he's experiencing, and he's writing it down. There is no commentary that he is writing here, except for occasional he'll and we got one a little later on. If I remember it, I'll bring it up. But this is basically what John saw, pure and simple. It's like we're watching a YouTube video. So chapter 19 or verse 19 in chapter 11. And remember, last week we finished up with the two witnesses, and then we had the seventh trumpet. We had the seventh trumpet sound, and the angel announced the the um, the proclamation that the the earth is now officially, legally back under the control of God and His Son. So, verse 19. Then God's temple in heaven was open, and the ark of His covenant was seen within the temple. And there were flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, an earthquake, and a heavy hail. And a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed in the sun and the moon under her feet, and on her head were a crown of 7 stars. She was pregnant and crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads were 7 diadems. His tail swept down a third of the stars from heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. She gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, in which she was to be nourished for 1,260 days. There's our 1,260 days. We're going to see it over and over again in Revelation. 1,260 days, 42 months, a time, times, and half a time. We see those 3 phrases of time blocks over and over again. That's 3.5 years if you count them all out. We see that over and over again in Revelation. And we understand that that's 3.5 years in the time that John measured time by. So if you're looking for 3.5.000 years, that's not going to happen. It's 3.5 years on John's calendar in John's time. So here we have John now switching, and suddenly the heavens are open. So we're in heaven now. We're looking at the temple in heaven, and all of a sudden we see the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant in the temple, and we see through John, we see flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, an earthquake, and heavy hail. Every one of us knows exactly what that brings to mind, and we know exactly what John was seeing and thinking of there. That is right from Exodus, right from when the children of Israel were at the foot of Mount Sinai looking up. Moses was going up to see God. God's presence was on Sinai at that point. So we know flashes of thunder, light, that is emblematic of God's presence. And of course God would be in his temple. Even though it is heaven, there's God in his temple. And all of a sudden we see the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant. And all of us should be thinking, well, what is the Ark of the Covenant? Ark of the Covenant is symbolic of the covenant that God made with the children of Israel, having to do with the law. So now our mind is thrown back to, we're seeing God's presence, God's temple, the Ark of the Covenant. We're thinking of God's covenant to his chosen people. And now John switches. He sees now, he's looking to heaven, so he's seeing now in heaven this woman. This woman that's up there. I have heard a bunch of different ideas of what the woman is, who she is, what is she doing. One of the things that I learned many years ago was that the woman is supposed to be symbolic of the church. Some of you might have heard that too. I'm going to tell you, think seriously about that. It is not uncommon to hear that the woman that we're looking at here, this woman and the dragon, the woman is representative of the church. And the reason I want to tell you that is one of the pillars of replacement theology, where there are a lot of churches, especially in North America, and a lot of evangelical churches that believe that the church in Revelation has replaced Israel. and that just I can't hold that. I cannot hold that. There is no evidence that I read in Revelation or anywhere else in the Bible that the church is to replace God's chosen people. I see no evidence. I see no reference. I The symbol just doesn't make any sense to me anymore. It did make some sense when these guys were teaching it to me, but thank goodness the Lord has straightened me out a little bit, I think. But I want, if you have heard that part is part of your belief, I want you to think seriously about that and look carefully at what we're going to go over, because I cannot see any evidence that this woman that we're looking at, that John is looking at here, represents the the church, the ecclesia, the called out ones here in the New Testament. The evidence that I do see is this woman is symbolic of Israel. This woman represents Israel. Now, since we're dealing with prophecy here, there is a lot of Mary, Jesus' mother, the the chosen the chosen woman to bear Jesus. There is a lot of Mary in this, but I think that the woman basically symbolizes Israel, and I'm gonna hit on one of the big things here. And the first thing we want to do is we say, okay, in the Old Testament, in the prophets of the Torah, do we see Israel being referred to as a woman? Well, yeah, we see that. Isaiah 54. If you want to roll over there, Isaiah 54. In fact, this whole part of this first, this is almost a psalm here in Isaiah. Isaiah 54, starting with the first verse. Sing, O barren ones who did not bear. Break forth into song and cry aloud, you who have not been in labor. For the children of the desolate one will be more than the children of her who is married, says the Lord. Enlarge the place in your tent, and let the curtains of your habitation be stretched out. Do not hold back. Lengthen your cords and strengthen the stakes. For you will spread abroad to the right and to the left, and your offspring will possess the nations and will people desolate cities. Fear not, for you will not be ashamed. You will not be confounded, for you will not be disgraced. For you will forget the shame of your youth, and the reproach of your widowhood you will remember no more. For your Maker, your capital M Maker, is your husband. The Lord, that's Jehovah, the Lord of hosts is his name. And the Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. The one of the whole earth he is called. The God of the whole earth he is called. For the Lord has called you like a wife deserted and grieved in spirit, like a wife of youth when she is cast off, says your Lord. For a brief moment I deserted you, but with great compassion I will gather you. In overflowing anger for a moment I hid my face from you, but with everlasting love I will have compassion on you, says the Lord, your Redeemer. There is a bunch of stuff in that psalm from Isaiah. I mean, the two powers in heaven are right there. If you didn't hear it, verse 5, for your Maker is your husband. The Lord, that's Jehovah of hosts is his name, and the Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. The Lord of the whole earth he is called. That's the Father, The Maker is your husband, the Father, the Lord of hosts, and the Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. That's the Redeemer of Israel, the Messiah that's coming. So there are the two powers in heaven right there, the Father and the Son. Right there. I mean, it's as plain as day. You can't say that Israel did not believe in a Godhead. There it is right there. He's talking about the husband, the father of Israel, and the Redeemer of Israel. That's two different people. And all the time he is referring to Israel here as God's bride. God's bride. We don't believe that God married the church. But that symbol is there. The symbol is there. So we have Israel referred to as the wife of God, and it treats her as a unfaithful wife. How many times have we seen Israel being punished by God for being unfaithful to him? For being unfaithful to him. And right there it is, over and over again. For a brief moment I deserted you. With great compassion I will gather you. I hid my face from you, but with everlasting love I have compassion on you. This is God. He had to divorce his chosen people, and then he brought them back. This is a beautiful example of God. And we see that in the church in Christ, the bride of the Redeemer. So you can't say that the Old Testament is one single God. There's two figures there. There's two figures in that passage. And Israel is referred to as a woman. From Isaiah, we go to Jeremiah. Jeremiah 3, and it's verse, I can't write, 19, verse 19. So look at Jeremiah, chapter 3, verse 19, starting. I said, how would I set you among my sons and give you a pleasant land, a heritage most beautiful of all nations? And I thought you would call me my father, and I would not turn from following me. Surely as a treacherous wife leaves her husband, so have you been treacherous to me, O house of Israel, declares Jehovah. So there again, God is referring to Israel as his unfaithful wife. And one more in Micah. Micah, one of the minor prophets. I'll give you a minute to find that. Micah chapter 4, and we'll start in about verse 9. Why do you cry aloud? Is there no king in you? Has your counselor perished? That pain that seized you like a woman in labor. Writhe and groan, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in labor. For now you shall go out from the city and dwell in the open country. You shall go to Babylon. There you shall be rescued. There the Lord will redeem you from the land of your enemies. Well, we've seen that before in Daniel. But there once again, Israel is referred to as a woman. So we got plenty of evidence in the Old Testament, in the prophets, that this woman that we're seeing with her head clothed in the sun and the moon under her feet, and her head with a crown of 12 stars, represents Israel. Now, just in case we think, well, what is that? What does the moon and stars have to do with it? Where does that come from? Well, yeah, we've got that in the Old Testament too. running all the way back to Genesis. We're in Genesis 37. And this is our old buddy Joseph. Genesis 37. And I'm going to read the first couple of paragraphs there. And this is another one of those cases where that first sentence of chapter 37 really belongs to chapter 36. But starting at verse 2, these are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy. With the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of the other sons, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a robe of many colors, but his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all the other brothers, and they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He, Joseph, said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers. "Behold, I have..." Can you believe Joseph? Is he not? Does he not see what's going on here? But we've talked about Joseph before. Then Joseph dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers, and he said, "Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." And when he said it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him. His father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow themselves to the ground before you?" And of course, we all know the story of Joseph, that, yeah, they actually did. They actually did. So Joseph did dream this dream of prophecy, and it's the same dream that he dreamed with the sheaths above it. The thing is that there is the image of the sun and the moon and the 11 stars. Joseph is a very pivotal figure in Israel, even though we think of David and the line of Judah, since it's the line of Messiah, we think of that as being the real ones we should pay attention to. But I brought up the fact that I had listened to some podcasts, stumbled onto them about Joseph's two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, and how important they were in the history of Israel, and how we don't always, especially in the Western church here, how we don't always pay a lot of attention to that. And in this podcast, I learned a whole lot about the history of the Samaritans, that half-breed kind of people, and their relationship to the tribe of Ephraim. And then Ephraim seems to crop up in prophecy, especially here in Revelation, because remember when we looked at the 144,000 back in chapter it was chapter 5 maybe, chapter 7, sorry. In chapter 7, when God lists the 144,000 from Israel and listed the 12 tribes, they're not listed in the usual order from firstborn down. They're not listed. They start with Judah. And then there's a tribe missing that's not usually missing. And there's a tribe that appears that's not usually appearing in a list of tribes that we see generally in the Old Testament. For one, Dan is not listed in those tribes. And for the second one, the priests, Levi is listed there when the tribe of the priests are not usually listed in the tribes. But we also get the tribe of Manasseh and then the tribe of Joseph. Now when Joseph's two sons are listed in the tribal list, they're usually listed as Ephraim and Manasseh. But this time, Ephraim is not listed. It's listed as Joseph. So there's something odd there, and I still don't have the answer. I can't answer you right now, but there's something going on about the ingathering of God's people in Revelation that has to do with the tribe of Ephraim. So we need to keep that in mind, and also it's very important that we look at this image of the woman representing Israel having the sun and the moon as in Joseph's dream, and then Joseph said there were 11 stars. Well, Joseph is the 12th one. So there are the 12 stars right there, and I think that is ironclad evidence that we're looking at a representation of Israel being that woman, of the nation of Israel. Now we come to the dragon. All right, here we go. We've got a great red dragon, 7 heads, 10 horns, and the heads had diadems on them. I'm going to stop right there. We'll deal with the tail in a minute. But 7 heads and 10 horns. There's a bunch of 10-horn things that we've seen in prophecy. In Daniel, we see 10 horns a lot, but we've never seen an animal or a representation of an animal. We've never seen an animal with 7 heads. That's confounding until you go back and look at Daniel and Daniel's dream, and it's in the 7th chapter of Daniel. So let's go back there and see if we can figure out where this 7-headed animal comes from. And I think this is another thing that brings together prophecy for us. So here, the 7th chapter of Daniel. And we're going to read that first paragraph. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions in his head as he lay in his bed. And he wrote down the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel declared, I saw in my vision of night, behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirred up in a great sea, and 4 beasts came out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion, and it had eagle's wings. And when I looked up, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the mind of a man was given to it. And behold, another beast, number 2. Second was like a bear, and it raised up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and was told, arise and devour much flesh. And after this I looked and beheld a third animal, like a leopard, with 4 wings of a bird on its back. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. And after this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong, and it had a great iron teeth, and it devoured and broke into pieces and stamped what was left with his feet. And it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up amongst them another horn, a little one, like before, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. The 4 beasts of Daniel, we went over that a long time ago, and they came to represent, according to Daniel's interpretation, they came to represent those 4 kingdoms that the Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream statue. But look at the beasts that were here that represent these countries. There was a lion, 1 head. There was next a bear with 1 head. There was a leopard, but that leopard had 4 heads. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there was this 4th beast that was not like the other, but it had just 1 head. Well, look at that. 7 heads. And that 4th beast, it had 10 horns. What do you think that maybe this beast that John is seeing here in Revelation, what do you think about this beast being a combination of the 4 beasts that Daniel saw in his dream? And think about it. This is the red dragon, and in the next paragraph we're going to see that the red dragon is called Satan, the deceiver of the world. So this red dragon, we don't have to guess about it. We're told by John that this is the devil, the deceiver. So this red dragon is the devil himself. The dragon has 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 crowns, and the 7 heads had the crowns on them. So my thinking is that John is seeing the 4 beasts of Daniel, which represent the Gentile kingdoms. Listen to this. Think of where it came from. Nebuchadnezzar's statue, where we've got the head, Babylon, the chest of Media Persia, the loins and thighs of Greece, and then the legs of iron as Rome. These are the 4 Gentile kingdoms that make up the ruling nations from Nebuchadnezzar down to the feet of iron and clay when that rock comes down. To me, that dream statue of Nebuchadnezzar's that Nebuchadnezzar saw and Daniel interpreted, I cannot get around the fact that that is a representation, a symbol of the time of the Gentiles. Remember, we've seen this before. We saw it in Daniel. We're going to see it again in Revelation, that we're waiting in these end times for the time of the Gentiles to be fulfilled. We're near the end here. Think about this, pray about this week, but I want you to think, is this red dragon that we're looking at here in Revelation, because it's going to make a difference here as we deal with this red dragon in a little bit, is this red dragon harking back to the dream that Daniel had of the 4 beasts, and those beasts' relationship to the dream statue that Nebuchadnezzar had, which I can't get out of my mind, is symbolic of the reign of the Gentile nations that were waiting to be fulfilled when the Messiah comes back. So think about that this week. If you pull if you see anything wrong with that, bring it back next week. But put that one front row to think about this week. Is that red dragon there Satan himself telling us that these nations, the Babylon, Media Persia, Greece, and Rome, who were they run by? Oh, well, that was Caesar and Nebuchadnezzar, and well, yeah, but who were they really run by? I
Satan.
think we just found out.
Yep.
I think we
There's
just
a
found out.
there's a hint on Revelation 13 too, though.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, we're gonna get deep into this red dragon. So I want you to put him, get your thoughts around him, and be looking at him because I think we've just discovered we, we he's tipped his hand a little bit. He's tipped his hand a little bit. So I'm going to end right there. We're going to pick up with the red dragon next week, and we're going to go on and we'll look at the rest of chapter 12. Finish that up because there's some odd things going on with talking about the woman when she gives birth, and also when Satan gets thrown down to the earth, and also that tail and a third of the stars. We got to deal with that too. So a lot of things coming up next week. Um, any questions before we leave?
No. Have a good one.
Yep.
Sounds
Look
exciting,
over your
Lauren. Can't
homework.
wait. Goodbye,
Okay.
everybody. God bless everybody.
God bless.
Thank you guys. Have a good weekend.